What if philanthropy and investment could work hand in hand to revolutionize cancer care? Our next guest, Alice Poponio, is pioneering a groundbreaking model to do just that. As the managing director of BrightEdge, the American Cancer Society's impact investment arm, Alice is harnessing the power of venture capital to fuel mission-driven healthcare startups. By investing in innovative technologies across the cancer care continuum, BrightEdge aims to not only generate financial returns, but also drive tangible improvements in cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and survivorship. Join us as Alice shares her personal journey that led her to this role and explains how BrightEdge is reshaping the landscape of cancer philanthropy. Discover how this unique model is unlocking capital, amplifying impact, and bringing more equitable solutions to patients in need. Let's go.
Welcome to Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli, where we highlight and speak with the innovators, the game changers, and the pioneers who are deeply passionate and relentless in solving the problems our world is facing today. This is your opportunity to connect with and learn from these leaders and to support them on their mission. Perhaps they will soon be hearing your story as well. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you on this journey with us. Hi, Alice. Thank you for joining up on our podcast today.
Hey, Mike. It's great to be here.
Well, given your personal and professional mission to find life-saving cancer treatments, coupled with your extensive experience in life sciences and business, and your deep-rooted passion for the American Cancer Society's life-saving work, I'm honored to be able to spend time with you today. But before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. While listening to any of our episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you will automatically receive episode updates in your podcast player. Simply search Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And lastly, please visit the bottom of the episode notes to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter in order to further the conversations occurring on this podcast. All right, Alice, it's almost time for our community to learn how you and the BrightEdge team, which is the American Cancer Society's impact investment arm, are pioneering a new model of philanthropy by investing in healthcare startups that deliver financial growth as well as cancer-fighting innovations. But first, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to others who are passionate about reimagining the health of our world?
Yeah, it's great to be here. And I think that's a really critical question because when we reimagine, what we also need to do is also re-listen. So I would say my piece of advice is pull before you push. Like it's so important, especially when we think of solutions. Half of the solution is the way the problem's defined. And thankfully at American Cancer Society, we have really deep understanding of the problems that weigh heavily, even disproportionately in the cancer ecosystem. And sadly, the people who have the least resources are highest at risk are the ones sometimes, unfortunately asked to fix the wider health system problems. And so I would really advise folks to pull before you push and have the end in mind.
Alice, I absolutely love it. And we're going to dive deeper into your model. It's a fabulous one. I'm excited for this conversation. But Alice, you know as well as I do, there's a lot of very, very hungry, very bright entrepreneurs, but they go and make a lot of assumptions about what they're building, their technology before getting out there and getting that feedback first. And I absolutely love your advice here, that pull before you push, i.e. go and listen to the folks that are the end users of whatever you might be building, hearing those pain points, and don't just do it once. Do it a lot. Get out there, get out of your desk, go on the street, proverbial street, if you will, and get that feedback. Is that part of some of the culture as well? Yes, we're going to talk about how, when, and where you guys are making investments and the unique model you have, but also, is that part of the advice column, if you will, that these tech and entrepreneurs and teams that you guys are investing in, are they able to get this kind of knowledge and advice from leaders like you while they're engaged with your team?
For sure. I mean, that really is the thesis of BrightEdge, which is we want to, as you mentioned, solve a lot of problems in one model. So the American Cancer Society is the country's largest cancer nonprofit. We invest in cancer research, patient safety net services, free lodging, free rides, and we also advocate in 50 state capitals. And the country has come to rely on American Cancer Society. What it doesn't realize is that it actually is quite vulnerable to economic swings. We rely on donor dollars. And so the idea that we could not only invest in some of the top talent, science, entrepreneurial approaches, generate alternative sources of income for ACS to sustain all of the important services that people come to depend on, but also harness entrepreneurial talent to deliver mission, right? And achieve system level change, meaning that you just mentioned that folks don't appreciate how complicated cancer is, but also the people who, the beneficiaries, don't necessarily have a voice in innovation and investing. And so through the Bright Edge model, the fact that we invest early stage through venture capital, we are unapologetically impact. At the same time, we're not concessionary. It really allows us to break out of the kind of inefficiencies of the current market and the dynamics that don't allow for incentives to be aligned so that everybody wins and ultimately patients have a seat at the table and we can design more rational and more ethical products that more patients can benefit from.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Well, you're teeing this conversation up perfectly, Alice. We have so much to discuss. We're going to discuss all of that and more and where things are heading for you in the organization. We're going to go to all of that after we get back from thanking our community champion sponsor.
Healthcare faces a paradox that echoes through generations. While the current practices that help heal patients today are vital, it is crucial to evaluate them through an environmental lens. OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative is a collection of interviews featuring influential thought leaders and industry experts like you who share their sustainability strategies, insights, and provide valuable perspectives from diverse industries to inspire innovation within the healthcare sector. OSHA invites you to join this journey. Want to share your sustainability story? OSHA is actively looking for partners to highlight the important and inspiring work being done around the globe. Check out OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative and series at OSHA.com. That's OSSUR.com. Or visit the episode notes and click on their link. Together, and with OSHA helping lead the way, let's all be responsible for tomorrow.
All right, we are back with Alice Pomponio, Managing Director of Bright Edge. Alice, thank you so much. Love how you started off the conversation. You need to pull more before you push. We got to get out there and listen. We got to understand the problem sets that are in front of us. And as you mentioned, the American Cancer Society touches every corner of this country and beyond, let's be honest. And the work you're doing is more pivotal than ever. We see it in all of our own personal lives. It seems like all of us are touched by one way or another. And I know there's a personal side for all of this work that you are involved in as well. Would love to hear a little bit of how you got into this in the first place. Give us a little bit of that journey leading up into you joining the American Cancer Society, of course, having, Bright Edge now under your leadership as well. And then we'll talk a little future state of where things are going for the organization, where you see things heading that we need to be mindful of as a community tuning in onto this podcast. And then, of course, always love to be able to help you out as well. This is a heck of a community rallied around this podcast. But before we get into all of that, Alice, take us back a bit. How did this all come together? How did you get so passionate about working in ACS, getting involved in Bright Edge? How did this all come to be in the first place?
Yeah, I think everything happens for a reason. Sadly, in my situation, it's tragedy, irony, and then that became strategy for me in my mid-career. So I'm a daughter of the biotech revolution. I was pre-med, undergrad, first generation, came from an immigrant family, dutiful daughter, and just was always more interested in the issues than I was in the science, which led me to actually science policy early on in my career. And I had the privilege of working on the Human Genome Program budget during the Clinton administration, and then kind of moved more into regulatory policy and then ultimately into what we call market access. So pricing, reimbursement, payer for companies like Sanofi, Genzyme, AstraZeneca, more in the rare disease, but also precision oncology space. And so I just had the privilege of always being on the cutting edge of science and really thinking of ways to build the market, shape the environment so the best innovations could make it to patients. Sadly, my family then about 12 years ago was ravaged by cancer. We've had 7 different types of cancer, 14 battles over 12 years. And so what strikes me is that cancer is really sneaky. It's not only lots of different diseases, but it pops up in really perversive and provocative ways. Like it can show up on your credit card. It can show up in systemic racism. It can show up in all these really, funky ways that have nothing to do with biology. And in my case, my mother passed away at 62 years old, essentially waiting for Medicare because she was scared of what healthcare was going to cost. And so that's tragic in that she was so young and she could have benefited from standard of care. I think it's ironic in that I was out there launching some of the most expensive biologics our industry has known. And I actually came to American Cancer Society as a volunteer. So I just started fundraising, walks, galas. And then before I knew it, I was asked to chair the area board here in Boston and then joined the national board of American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And that was when I started hearing more about all the data and the public health initiatives, American Cancer Society had to support health equity and address disparities. And so that was like my aha. Oh my gosh, cancer is genetic. I'm at high risk. If I'm on this planet to do something meaningful, then I don't have much time. And how can I take my platform and actually, because I don't have that many cancer survivors in my family, how do I use it to lend representation and voice to people who don't have that privilege because I couldn't help my own people? So that's my origin story. And I sort of fell into becoming a patient advocate, impact investor. And actually, I think BrightEdge is a social enterprise. So I think that we're, social entrepreneurs as well.
Wow. What a powerful way to set up this conversation, Allison. Thank you for that. Now, also, you've now been the managing director a little over 3 years for BrightEdge. Give the audience a little bit of understanding of how that came to be and why. This is a very unique model. I'm very excited to be able to have this conversation today to share with our community. Go ahead and take us back into the scenes a bit of where those light bulbs went off for the American Cancer Society, the whys, and how it came to be, because this is a really, really special model.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the lived experience, on just the professional side, which is this space is so rapidly evolving. And I think we can be very literal or one-dimensional when we approach problems. But as you have more richness and lived experience, you can really tease apart, what the opportunity is. And so American Cancer Society, like many other nonprofits, had seen one nonprofit in particular, the CF Foundation, do quite well in direct investing and essentially, receive income that made their more traditional community level fundraising not obsolete. It was more optional rather than a necessity. And so that was the original thinking behind BrightEdge, was how can we invest in a space that's quite vibrant? There's a lot of profit being made. It's a space where we have domain knowledge. Let's try and set up a direct investment program to diversify income. That was what I inherited back in 2019. We've come a long way, and I think now we're really poised to be the market, the industry leader, as well as the sort of change maker in what is the new impact economy, meaning we now have an approach that achieves the triple bottom line, right? It advances science, it generates returns, but it also delivers mission and achieves that system level transformation in the process. And oh, by the way, educates people about American Cancer Society's mission of ending cancer as we know it for all, because we know the 1 degree rule, which means if the plane's off by 1 degree, you could end up in New York instead of Boston. The market's very good at investing and innovating away from health equity, meaning we are seeing widening disparities and we are seeing lots of money going to areas that are well served. Meanwhile, specific types of cancer, brain, esophageal, pancreatic, specific parts of the country, populations, Black and Brown, LGBTQ, continue to be left behind. So how do we fix that? How do we essentially trick the market to do more on behalf of patients? And so with BrightEdge, what we were able to do is essentially infuse impact and make it an intentional part of our investment strategy. And what we do is we take 11 thematic priority areas to screen in what are attractive investments, and then we invest blended capital, financial and strategic capital coming out of ACS to deepen impact in a very vibrant and also competitive deal-making landscape.
And in regards to that model, Alice, are you guys agnostic to where maybe the stage of that company is? Does it have to be, pre-seed? Can you maybe share a bit, like what is that persona type of the company that you are investing in?
Yeah. So when BrightEdge was first set up, it was a sort of later stage, more conservative investment strategy where we were following other traditional investors. I'm really proud of the reboot that we've done in the first 2 years, which is to say, hey, we want to pay homage to the totality of American Cancer Society's mission, right? And we spend lots of resources educating people about prevention, screening, early detection. We weren't investing in many of those, right? And then we also see great results with patients on cancer therapy, but they still need support in managing their survivorhood. they still need help accessing and affording treatments. And so now we invest across the entire cancer care continuum, from prevention, diagnosis, treatment, all the way to survivorhood. And we typically invest seed to Series A. So we are shifting a little earlier because we have great partnership with our discovery research organization. We're talking the largest non-governmental funder of cancer research, 50 Nobel laureates, 1,100 institutions, 25,000 grantees. We touched 60% of all of the venture-backed Series A to C deals in oncology in the last 3 years. So that's a tremendous set of capabilities and change makers that we were not embracing in our previous model. And so today we've made 21 investments. We've actually had 5 exits. And like I said, we are technology agnostic. We are sort of stage specific because that's where we feel we can drive more impact when these key decisions have not yet been made and we can have a seat at the table. And then we are leaning even earlier through our innovation programs into being company formers and the first check writers.
Wow, that is powerful in regards to what you just shared, and for that reach for those entrepreneurs. It's absolutely game changing. Let's talk about those entrepreneurs for a bit, Alice. You mentioned earlier that the American Cancer Society touches every single state in our country. Powerful, right? That network is incredibly big. If I'm an entrepreneur and I may be looking to receive or have an evaluation for an investment from BrightEdge, what also comes with that? Because you know as well as I do, entrepreneurs necessarily don't just need money. They need that kind of proverbial smart money. What does that mean for the entrepreneur? What does that look like on the day-to-day that those founding teams or those early operating teams for the investments in the companies that you've made, what does it mean for them?
Yeah, I love that you said smart money. Actually, we call smart money the MDs, PhDs in the room. Not so smart money is who follows. And we're the wise money in the room because we're the ones who can really validate whether or not the problem that is being claimed to be solved is really a problem. And is that where we have evidence and know this is where the greatest impact could be achieved? And so that's one. The second is that at least in medicines, and because I came from biopharma and I helped price, launch, get reimbursed a number of, really innovative products, is that, 70% of drugs that are launched by biopharma actually come from small biotech companies. So those are scientific founders with more traditional venture capitalists that are thinking financial first. And that's when all those key decisions are being made, right? So when they think someone else is going to fix this problem, pharma's going to fix the problem, or, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, they're going to go lobby Congress to get a CMS rule change. We got to get out of that funk because we're lobbying on things that, were in the pipeline, were in development 10, 15 years ago. We should have already been informing those brilliant scientists and even our co-investors about health system reform, about patient access, adherence, affordability at a time when they could make, the better choice, whether it was which indication, what formulation, how the trial would be designed so that it represented all types of patients that could benefit. And these are things that now, as an investor on the cap table, we have the ability to contribute to that design thinking in ways that we never did before. And I think that's going to be the next generation of more sustainable, more ethical products that you're going to see come through.
That's a very exciting, and glad to hear that, because it's so, as well as I do, it's so important. Again, it's a little bit more of that push and pull, right? Being able as an entrepreneur to receive that feedback and receive that smart and that wise knowledge. I love that, by the way, Alice. Also, in regards to the entrepreneurial profile, given that it's the proverbial American Cancer Society, is it just relegated to entrepreneurs or startups in the United States? Or are you seeking some of the best minds from around the world? What does it look like for that persona type that is the investment being made?
Yeah. So we have such an amazing alumni community, at least in our entrepreneurs program. So we just announced 9 startup companies and entrepreneurs in our BrightEdge Entrepreneurs program that was launched this last year. Over 50% of them are ACS alumni grantees. So that is really exciting. But you asked the question about international. So our focus is addressing, the health equity, cancer care issues here in the US. That said, there's a lot of great innovation overseas, especially innovation that addresses low resource settings. We actually need to bring some of that thinking in, right, to shake up the standard of care. So we have an Israeli financial navigation software company that helps patients identify if there is any gap in payment, that they can then be eligible and enroll in free drug copay assistance, other in-kind services. That's TaylorMade. We speak a lot about that company because we ourselves grant navigation support to health systems and we pay for salaries of case managers. TaylorMade creates a clear ROI for the hospitals to increase patient load, reduce bad debt. Patients adhere to the care because there's less chance of surprise bills. And we potentially make, returns on the investment and we save money for American Cancer Society. So that's a quadruple bottom line. We've also invested in a South Korean AI/ML enabled radiology, pathology, and 2D mammography company that allows, more democratization of technical interpretation of scans for lung and breast cancer screening. And we also have invested in their research platform for treatment optimization. So we have a UK small molecule company in multiple myeloma. So it's not limited to US-based companies, but our focus is on how do these companies deliver upon American Cancer Society's mission.
And then let's also discuss the other side of this equation, meaning the entrepreneur, of course, not only wants that wise money to get that feedback loops and be able to get that advice and having those team members on the cap table, if you will, but as well as I do, let's really boil it down. The opportunity for the investment community that is part of that organization to open up deal flow, to open up business development opportunities. What does the other side of this equation look like if you were to invest in my startup per se?
Yeah, I think that, obviously in fact, we had our Bright Edge Summit last November, which is our gathering of co-investors, funders, portfolio companies. And there was a panel that included several portfolio companies. And they said that our diligence actually made them better, at what they did because they weren't being asked those questions previously by other investors. And on top of that, when you think of any company that is entering into a space where there is market risk and the ability for American Cancer Society to look, we know how to build communities and we know how to generate consensus. And so that's something that I think is uniquely available to us compared to another VC that could write a larger check. We have more than a dozen or half a dozen national roundtables where we convene all of the medical and scientific societies, major health systems, disease-specific nonprofits. And right now, they're having conversations around what are barriers in implementation. And there are then recommendations around clinical guidelines as well as policy. Imagine if those groups came together and said, this is the innovation gap in our space. And well beyond therapeutics, there may be ways for us to innovate at a system level or at a population level to help drive better patient outcomes, especially for, high-risk populations. So I think those are the types of things. I mean, absolutely, we can make connections with other VCs, although I would say that our network are all mission-aligned VCs. We don't want to work with folks that don't share our appetite and passion for mission. So from a principles or values-based leadership standpoint, I think we have a very strong network. But beyond that, I think we have the access to the knowledge capital at ACS. We have the ability to really help inform and shape the market. And then on top of that, we may be in a great position to unlock new pools of capital from the markets when we start talking about impact allocation and ESG, which could be a source of new risk capital given, the recent market shifts.
Now, let's also look a little future state. We'll take the proverbial crystal ball off the shelf, if you will, Alice. Let's look a little future state, even, 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years. What are you seeing as an expert in this space, not only for, the oncology market in regards to technology and innovation, what is needed, what's, kind of what's out there to help solve for some of these major pressing issues in regards to health and care? And then also, where is Bright Edge going to be in all of that? Are you seeing a different pathway for the organization? What's on the horizon, both on the macro level as well as on the company level?
Yeah. So I would say there'll be more awareness that impact is material, that we are recognized as experts in defining and solving some of these problems. And we actually have a proprietary cancer impact investment framework, which takes our mission priority areas along with great, insights from the American Cancer Society to assess the non-financial performance of our portfolio. And maybe one day people will also want our sort of stamp of approval in terms of what is the impact alongside financial returns. We think that that is going to be game changing because it will allow more people and more investors to come into this space with confidence. And so that's one. The second is, there are some trends that we see because American Cancer Society is pan-cancer. We are across the entire US and we have deep commitment to health equity. it really allows us to look for problems and solutions that others are not necessarily seeing. And so we can operate at a system level, we can operate at a population level and at a market level. And so I constantly say to my team, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Does more capital necessarily address it? Is there some other innovation bottleneck that we could bring American Cancer Society's capabilities to bear? So I think over time, you'll see both American Cancer Society's sort of definition of impact begin to be more infused. So earlier cancer, right? Detection, prevention, some of the health-related social needs, all of those things being viable areas for commercial product development. And then how we continue to convene and catalyze new investments in areas that we believe have great opportunity and growth.
A very, very exciting look into the crystal ball, Alice. Thank you so much for sharing that in a very, very exciting future indeed. So let's bring it back to current state, though. Got an incredible community rallied around this podcast. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, they always love to help our guests out. What's one problem, need, or question that you have that this community can be helping you with?
So our model is still in proof of concept. We are fully owned by the American Cancer Society, and we are 80% of the way to being revenue generating. What does that mean? Today, BrightEdge is standing at about 80 million gross asset value, and we have committed to the American Cancer Society that when we reach 100 million, we will begin granting back a percentage of the annual realized returns from our investments. Right now, when we have distributions, we have exits, the money goes back into the portfolio so we can grow. So we are in the space right now of still seeking donor funding to fill that gap, because once we hit 100, then not only will we be granting back to ACS and becoming a steady, income stream, we then have permission to start opening up the next generation of products. And so that allows us to really partner with groups who have, just a wealth of ideas and capabilities in completely new ways. So I would say that if anyone has ideas on how to accelerate us getting to that 100 million, we would love to chat with you more. And then those who are standing ready to partner with us post 100 million, we also would love to hear with you.
A very clear and exciting call to action for our community. I absolutely love it, Alice. In order for our community to help you with those very clear goals that you have in front of the team and the organization, how do they get a hold of you? Social media handles, contact points online, websites, or otherwise? How do they track you down online?
So you can find us on cancer.org, which is American Cancer Society's website. Also, acsbrightedge.org is our website. We're on social media, LinkedIn, X, as well as Facebook. You can find me. And I think what's surprising is we are the traditional scientific medical congresses. We'll be at AACR, at ASCO, but we're also, really shaking things up. We don't want to be your grandmother's ACS. We really want to build more open innovation communities. And so we actually have a health equity meetup at South by Southwest in a couple of weeks. If anybody's going to be in Austin, we're in different communities holding listening and salon events. So I would just say, check us out on our website and social media and come find us. We're often zigzagging around the country.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Alice. And for our listening community, just simply scroll on down into your episode notes from your favorite podcast player to find those contact points online for Alice and the BrightEdge team. Of course, you can head over to our free global online community over at passionatepioneers.com. There will be a post for Alice's episode where you can also leave comments and feedback for this episode, as well as to find those contact points online. Again, over at passionatepioneers.com. Well, Alice, thank you so much for joining today. This has been a very exciting conversation. But before we let you go, we do have a fill in the blank for you. I'm a passionate pioneer because
cancer patients and their families can't wait.
Way to bring it all together. Alice, what an incredible conversation. Thank you for taking time to be with our community today, to share everything happening in your camp and all the wonderful things that are going for BrightEdge and how we can all get involved as well. Again, Alice, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast so we can continue to improve this community and to further support the pioneers being featured. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends and colleagues to join us. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you back with us during our next episode.